Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off this journey with you today. Our presentation is called The Meaning of History, and it's part of Chapter 1, Lesson 1. In this session, we'll explore what history truly means, tracing its roots back to ancient Greece and looking at how historians work to reconstruct and interpret the past. We'll uncover the methods and ideas that help us understand human history better. So, let's get started and dive into the fascinating world of history. The word historia reflects a foundational idea, that understanding the past requires active, disciplined inquiry, not passive observation. When we talk about history, we're really talking about a process of seeking knowledge through investigation. The term history itself comes from the Greek word historia, which means learning through inquiry. This highlights that uncovering the past isn't just about looking back passively, but about actively asking questions and exploring. Aristotle, a Greek philosopher, saw history as a systematic account of natural phenomena. He believed that understanding history involved arranging events in chronological order, which emphasizes the importance of scientific investigation into past events. So, the Greek origins of history remind us that studying the past is a disciplined, inquiry-driven process, central to our overall understanding of human experience. Let's explore how events unfolded and why they happened. It's important to look beyond just the facts and consider the deeper forces driving transformation. When we do this, we're not just listing what occurred, but examining the causes and effects that led to change. This helps us understand the underlying reasons behind historical developments. On the other hand, there's the aspect of speculative history. This involves asking questions like, who was involved? What exactly happened? When did it take place? And where did it happen? These questions help us gather the basic, straightforward information that forms the foundation of our understanding. Factual history is all about creating a chronological narrative of human affairs and phenomena. Historians develop theories to better investigate and understand these events. In essence, we have two main approaches: factual history, which focuses on the basic details, and speculative history, which explores deeper causes and implications. Both are essential for a comprehensive understanding of the past, especially as we look at how events connect to the broader themes of change and transformation. Speculative history is a fascinating approach because it helps us go beyond just a simple timeline of dates and names. It allows us to explore the deeper forces that influence how events unfold, giving us a richer and more complete picture of why the world is the way it is today. Without this layer of analysis, history might be informative, but it can also feel shallow, lacking in understanding of the complex motivations and connections behind the events. Now, why does this matter? Well, it helps us see patterns and recurring forces across different time periods, which can reveal how similar dynamics repeat or evolve over time. It also uncovers connections between events that might seem unrelated at first glance, showing us the bigger picture. Plus, it digs into the social, political, and economic forces that shape history, helping us understand the context behind actions and decisions. When we explore the speculative aspects of history, we gain deeper insights. We analyze motivations, intentions, and broader contexts, which lead to a more nuanced interpretation of past events. This approach enriches our understanding and allows us to see history not just as a series of isolated incidents, but as a complex web of interconnected influences. Ultimately, the depth of speculative history lies in its ability to bring to light these hidden forces and patterns, giving us a more comprehensive and meaningful view of the past, something that's essential for truly understanding how history shapes our present and future. Historians play a crucial role in how we understand the past. They bridge both approaches by not only establishing facts, but also constructing interpretive frameworks. These frameworks help us find meaning, context, and relevance for today's audiences. When we think about the historian's role, it's more than just listing dates, locations, individuals, or events. It's about delving deeper to understand the how and the why behind what happened. They explore the causes and consequences of events, those pivotal moments that lead to transformative changes in society or history itself. Now, there are different ways to approach history. Speculative history, for example, provides straightforward, essential information, focusing on the who, what, when, and where. It's about laying out the basic building blocks of any historical account. On the other hand, factual history tends to tell stories of events, especially related to human affairs, arranged in chronological order. Historians then develop theories to better understand and explore the past. So, when we talk about history, whether it's narrative, theory, or inquiry, we're engaging in a dynamic process. It's about telling stories, developing explanations, and asking questions that deepen our understanding of how the past shapes our present and future. This slide reminds us that history isn't just about facts. It's about creating meaningful connections and interpretations that resonate with contemporary audiences. Let's explore the key responsibilities of historians. First, they conduct extensive research using both primary and secondary sources. This means delving into original documents, artifacts, and also consulting other scholars' work to build a comprehensive understanding. Next, they aim to construct meaningful, well-organized representations of history. It's about creating a narrative that makes sense and highlights the significance of past events. Another important aspect is determining the scope and framework of their inquiry. This helps define what questions to ask and what time periods or themes to focus on, shaping the entire narrative. Historians also provide relevance to a group's understanding of its own past. By doing so, they help communities connect with their history, fostering a sense of identity and continuity. Most importantly, studying history allows us to gain insights into the present. By understanding how past events have shaped current circumstances, we can better navigate today's challenges. Now, it's crucial to remember that history is never created in a vacuum. It reflects the perspectives, priorities, and cultural contexts of both the people being studied and the historians doing the studying. A fundamental question that guides every historical account is, whose history is being explored? This question helps establish the purpose and framework of the narrative, ensuring it's meaningful and relevant. Ultimately, a key purpose of history is to help groups understand their past. When historians do their job well, they provide insights that resonate today and inform our understanding of the world. Now, moving on to slide 7, let's explore how modern historical writing has evolved beyond just examining documents. Today, historiography incorporates research methods from related fields like archaeology and geography, which really broadens our evidentiary base and allows us to create richer, more nuanced narratives. This evolution reflects the discipline's ongoing effort to reconstruct the past as completely and accurately as possible. You see, it's not just about gathering written records anymore. Modern historians combine diverse methods for a more comprehensive analysis. Think of it as an interdisciplinary practice. For example, they incorporate archaeology, geography, and even fieldwork to gather new insights. This has led to the construction of detailed chronologies and textual interpretations that deepen our understanding of historical events. Historically, the practice of documenting history was called historiography. Traditionally, it involved collecting documents from libraries and archives to form the foundation of our narratives. These archival sources provided the raw material for descriptive and analytical histories. So, in essence, historiography is about how we write history, but today it's much more than just collecting documents. It's about integrating multiple methods and disciplines to tell a richer, more accurate story of the past. As we look into the past, one of the biggest challenges we face is the absence of artifacts or other concrete evidence. This lack of material remains makes it much harder to understand the human settings where these events actually occurred. Think about it. Entire civilizations, communities, and individual lives have come and gone, leaving behind little to no trace. This essentially renders them invisible to us today, making it difficult to piece together what really happened. This brings us to a broader issue, the incompleteness of historical records. Many human activities throughout history simply weren't documented or preserved. As a result, there are events, actions, and even individuals whose stories we may never fully know. This gap in the record means our understanding of history is often incomplete, and some parts of the human story might remain forever out of reach. Basically, the limitations of what has been recorded and preserved define how much we can truly know. It's a reminder that history isn't just what's written down, it's also what's missing, and that missing part can be just as significant. This is a fundamental challenge to our pursuit of historical knowledge, but it also highlights the importance of critical thinking and interpretation when studying the past. Records are influenced by the interests and perspectives of those who created or controlled them. For example, official documents often reflect the viewpoint of those in power rather than the broader population. This is what we call creator bias, and it's important to remember because it shapes the stories we tell about the past. Even when records do survive, they're not always equally accessible to all historians. Factors like language barriers, geographic distance, institutional gatekeeping, or political restrictions can limit access. This is what we refer to as accessibility bias. It means that some voices or perspectives might be missing simply because the records are hard to reach or understand. Plus, not all records survive equally over time. Materials, locations, and cultures with more resources were more likely to have their records preserved, leading to what we call preservation bias. This skews our understanding toward the powerful and privileged, because their records are more likely to survive and be available. Finally, as historians, we mainly rely on the records that have survived to piece together the past. These surviving documents give us valuable glimpses into historical events, but we have to remember, they only represent a fraction of what actually happened. The records we see are just a selective window, shaped by bias and the survival process itself. Physical evidence is inherently partial. It survives by accident as much as by design, and its interpretation is always mediated by the assumptions and frameworks of the scholars who study it. A single excavated site may reveal the architecture, tools, or burial practices of a community, but it cannot tell us about the full range of human experience. Things like conversations, emotions, daily routines, or social dynamics that truly animated that community's life remain hidden. Archaeological and anthropological discoveries can offer valuable insights into the past, but it's important to remember that they only represent fragments of the whole historical picture. While these findings shed light on specific aspects of past societies, whether it's technology, social structure, or beliefs, they can never fully capture the complexity and diversity of human history. So, what we have are valuable, but incomplete pieces of a much larger puzzle. Archaeology and anthropology give us fragments of the whole, helping us understand certain parts of the past, but always with the awareness that there's so much more that remains out of reach. This highlights the importance of approaching these discoveries with both curiosity and humility, recognizing their limitations while appreciating their insights. This slide highlights an important idea about the nature of history itself. It emphasizes that history is never truly complete or finished. Instead, our understanding of the past is constantly evolving and being refined as new evidence comes to light. This ongoing process means that our knowledge of history is always subject to change. As new records are discovered, they can either support what we already believe or challenge those interpretations. This is a key point. History is dynamic because new evidence can reshape our understanding. Historians start by collecting and assessing various sources. These might be artifacts, documents, or other records. Based on this credible evidence, they construct narratives or stories about the past. But it's important to realize that these narratives are always provisional. They are built on the best available evidence at the time, but they can be revised when new evidence emerges. Ultimately, this cycle shows that historical claims are never set in stone. They are always open to revision, reflecting the ongoing, dynamic nature of the discipline. This idea connects back to the broader theme of how history is a continuous pursuit of understanding rather than a fixed story. Rather than seeing incompleteness as a failure, historians actually view it as a defining feature of their discipline. It's something that pushes us toward intellectual humility, requiring us to acknowledge what we don't know. It also calls for methodological rigor, meaning we have to be careful and systematic in how we analyze what's available. And importantly, it encourages a commitment to continual inquiry, always seeking new sources and perspectives. Every gap in the record is both a limitation and an invitation, an opportunity to look deeper and ask new questions. It's crucial to remember that the historical record isn't a clear window onto the past. Rather, it's a collection of fragments. Each piece has been shaped by the circumstances of its creation and what survived over time. This incompleteness highlights the inherent limitations we face as historians. We have to navigate gaps, uncertainties, and biases that are embedded in the evidence we find. Our job is to work through these challenges, constantly expanding our understanding through ongoing research and exploring new sources. It's a process of piecing together a puzzle, knowing that the picture we form is never fully complete, but always improving with effort and curiosity. While these events might have taken place, they have essentially vanished into oblivion, leaving behind only sporadic remnants. As historians, we can only grasp a fraction of the full story through the records that have survived. Even discoveries from archaeology and anthropology, though incredibly important, represent just small fragments unearthed from the vast expanse of the past. These pieces are valuable, but inherently incomplete. When we talk about archaeological fragments, we're referring to the surviving remnants of the past, things like documents, artifacts, ruins, that have endured through time. But these are only a tiny portion of what actually happened. The concept of history as record encompasses the complete totality of everything that has ever happened, every event, every person, every moment. It's the full historical reality, but most of it is forever beyond our reach. This brings us to history as actuality, which is limited by the availability of records. Many human events occur without leaving any trace or documented evidence. No artifacts, no inscriptions, nothing that can help us understand what truly happened. So, the gap between history as actuality and history as record highlights how much of the past remains inaccessible. It's a reminder that our understanding of history is always partial, shaped by what has been preserved and what has been lost over time. The dynamic nature of historical research explains why the subject matter is often considered incomplete. This isn't a flaw. Rather, it's what makes history a living and evolving discipline. With each new generation of scholars, our understanding becomes more nuanced and refined. The validity of historical assertions isn't fixed. New discoveries can support or challenge what we previously believed. A single letter, artifact, or archive can completely reshape how we view an entire era. So, why do interpretations change? Well, historians analyze the evidence that has survived through time. They build narratives based on what they see as reliable sources, carefully weighing different pieces of evidence, cross-referencing, and applying interpretive frameworks. This process helps us make sense of the past, but it also means that our understanding is always open to revision. Ultimately, this ongoing process of interpretation is what keeps history vibrant and relevant. So, at the same time, we have to recognize that the specific cultural, social, political, and economic circumstances of each time and place produce experiences that are truly unique. These experiences are so shaped by their context that they can't really be universalized. This idea is what we call contextual diversity. Even across vastly different eras and cultures, certain themes tend to recur, like conflict, cooperation, innovation, and inequality. These themes help us see connections between human experiences through time, showing that some aspects of our history are shared across different societies. But at the same time, historians understand that while we can find patterns, experiences can vary greatly depending on the specific circumstances of a particular time and place. So, there's a balance between recognizing shared human patterns and appreciating the differences that make each experience unique. This brings us to the broader idea that history isn't just a collection of facts. It's a subjective process of recreation. It's about understanding that our interpretations are shaped by context, and that history is, in many ways, a story we tell based on the perspectives and experiences we focus on. In the end, this perspective helps us see both the common threads that connect us and the rich diversity that makes each historical moment special. It's a reminder that understanding history requires both recognizing patterns and respecting the uniqueness of each experience. To construct a meaningful understanding of history, historians start by analyzing all the available records, artifacts, and sources. They carefully assess each one's reliability and relevance to ensure they're building on solid ground. From there, they gather the evidence and employ various methods of inference to interpret what they find. This means filling in gaps where direct evidence might be missing, but always staying grounded in what is known about the period. Next, they draw broader inferences about motivations and actions, trying to understand why historical figures acted the way they did. This involves considering the social and cultural context surrounding those actions, which helps us see the bigger picture. Finally, all these pieces come together into a coherent narrative, something meaningful that sheds light on the past for us today. This process of interpretation and inference is key to constructing accurate, insightful stories about history that help us understand how the past shapes the present. This is a humbling acknowledgement. The history we know is always smaller than the history that actually occurred. The historian's craft lies in making the most of what survives and being honest about what does not. From the historian's perspective, history encompasses solely the portion of the human past that can be meaningfully pieced together using the existing records and inferences drawn about the historical context in which they originated. No two historical moments are identical, and no two individuals experience the same event in exactly the same way. This complexity is what makes historical reconstruction both challenging and endlessly fascinating. Historians endeavor to reconstruct the entirety of humanity's past despite the limited evidence at their disposal. They approach this task with the understanding that individuals exist in distinct temporal contexts, and their experiences can be both comparable and significantly diverse based on the specific time and location. Reconstructing the human past is an ambitious task. It requires piecing together fragments of evidence, understanding the broader context, and acknowledging the gaps that remain. This process reminds us of both the limits and the incredible possibilities inherent in studying history. Human testimony introduces important dimensions like intention, emotion, perspective, and cultural meaning that physical evidence alone simply cannot convey. This is what makes historical inquiry uniquely human and also inherently complex. Some natural scientists, such as geologists and paleozoologists, who study fossils as historical artifacts, share similarities with historians in certain ways. However, the key difference is that historians deal with human testimonies in addition to physical traces. This adds an extra layer of intricacy to their work, because interpreting human stories and perspectives makes history more nuanced. Now, compared to natural sciences, the study of history is more subjective. Natural sciences can often rely on measurable, objective phenomena, but history deals with fragmented records and artifacts that don't fully capture the full picture. This subjectivity is unavoidable, and it's part of what makes historical work challenging. Ultimately, a historian's goal is to achieve verisimilitude, to understand the past in a way that feels accurate, real, and believable. It's about creating a version of history that resonates as authentic, even though we're often working with incomplete or interpretive evidence. Even in this endeavor, the historian is constrained by the evidence available, by the limits of inference, and by the boundaries that separate history from fiction. The process of uncovering the past relies on a combination of methods, what we call the historical method, that includes both historical technique and historiography. Together, they form a toolkit that helps us reconstruct as much of humankind's story as possible. The historical method is essentially the creative reconstruction of the past based on gathered information. It transforms raw evidence into coherent and meaningful narratives about human history. Historiography, on the other hand, is the systematic examination and critical analysis of historical documents and artifacts. It's the investigative foundation upon which all historical writing is built. The historical technique involves carefully examining and analyzing these documents and artifacts to gather reliable information. So, you see, historiography is about critically engaging with sources, and the historical technique is about applying careful methods to analyze them. Ultimately, the combination of these approaches enables us to write history, creating a narrative that is as accurate and insightful as possible, given the evidence we have. This interconnected process, historical technique and historiography, is what we refer to as the historical method, and it's essential for understanding how history is constructed and understood. These boundaries serve a vital function. They help ensure that our historical accounts remain accountable to evidence, which is essential for maintaining the integrity and credibility of the discipline. Even when historians exercise interpretive judgment, these boundaries keep the analysis grounded in what can be reasonably supported by evidence. History is explicitly distinguished from creative forms like fiction, poetry, drama, and fantasy. While these can draw inspiration from the past, they are not bound by the same evidentiary constraints that define historical writing. So, what exactly is history? It's a disciplined, evidence-based reconstruction of the past. It relies on surviving records, artifacts, and reasoned inference, all aimed at striving for accuracy, credibility, and a sense of verisimilitude, making the past feel as real as possible. However, it's important to recognize that historians rarely describe events exactly as they happened. The idea that the past actually occurred can be limiting. It places restrictions on the types of records we can use and the creative license that we, as historians, might take to interpret those records. This brings us to the boundaries between history and fiction. While history aims to reconstruct the past as accurately as possible, it's understood that some degree of interpretation and storytelling is involved. These boundaries help us differentiate credible, evidence-based history from creative storytelling, even though both may draw from similar sources. Now, let's wrap up our discussion by understanding how historians build their narratives. Reliable and noteworthy details are carefully extracted from sources or their components. When we talk about historiography, we're referring to the way these details come together to form a coherent account of history. First, we need to extract reliable details. This means thoroughly examining the authenticity of our sources, whether we're looking at entire documents or just parts of them. This step is crucial because the credibility of our sources directly impacts the accuracy of our historical narrative. Next, we gather sources related to our subject. These could include primary documents, artifacts, or secondary literature, anything that provides insight into the topic we're investigating. Then we move on to choosing a subject. This involves defining the scope, the period, and the specific focus of our inquiry. Setting clear boundaries helps us stay focused and organized. Finally, we recognize that historical analysis is a vital part of the process. It involves several key steps, and it's important to note that synthesis and analysis are closely linked. They're two sides of the same coin. Together, they help us interpret the sources and develop a well-rounded understanding of history. All of these steps, selecting, gathering, scrutinizing, and analyzing, are interconnected. They form the foundation of good historiography, which ultimately allows us to create a credible and meaningful historical account.